Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Elizabeth Hall with Hall Educational Resources, and I just wanted to say thank you all for joining us. This session, we're really excited to be able to bring this to you, and it came from just some ideas that I was kind of kicking around and chatting with some other consultants, and then also Kristen Kaschub from Gould, as one of the things I've been experiencing. I'm a schools consultant and do not do college placement, but just independent day in boarding schools, and was finding that more families were asking about skiing, ski programs, what sort of opportunities in the boarding school world there are for skiing, both Nordic and Alpine. And I realized that there really weren't a lot of kind of clear resources, if you will, to be able to access as a consultant. And so one of the things I thought would be really helpful for all of us and our colleagues is to put together some sort of opportunity to share and learn more, given there are a lot of different opportunities between NCAA programs, USCSA teams, recruitment nuances, and in particular, the role that boarding schools can play in terms of ski and also snow sport programs in preparing those student athletes. So there's a lot that can feel really overwhelming. I know I have had to learn a lot in supporting some of the clients that I've had. And so thus the idea for this presentation was born. So our idea, like our goal really today is pretty simple, to try to demystify, if you will, that pathway from the high school, boarding school slopes, if you will, to the college competition levels. And so I feel really fortunate that we've been able to pull together a terrific group of professionals, outstanding coaches and experts who kind of live this work every day. So my hope and our hope is that you'll be equipped with some practical insights in terms of training timelines, athletic balances, academic balances, competition levels, so that you can support students that you work with moving forward, and also continue to help them feel empowered and pursue the passions that they have with regard to skiing. I just want to shout out, we've got a couple of wonderful folks, and Kristen will help with the introductions, and also our colleague Larry Blumenstick has just so generously offered to help us here as well in terms of moderating and helping us move the session forward today. So I'm going to turn it over to Kristen, and she can introduce things further.
Wonderful. Thank you. So Michael, if you wouldn't mind sharing the deck.
Absolutely. Just one moment.
So we have a wonderful cohort here. We thought it would be important to bring the high school perspective as well as the college perspective. So we have a nice swath of folks here. We have obviously Elizabeth, who is on the high school side. And then we also have Larry Blumenstick, who's on the college side for the most part. Can you put it in? Yes, perfect. Um, so this is the group. So we have Eric Harlow. He is actually a Gould alum, which we love, but is the head coach over at Colby. And then Michael Hirschbuhl. He's our head U14 Alpine coach. And then we also have Ben Kamilewicz, who is also an alum here at Gould, but has many hats, including Dean of Academics, as well as the head Nordic ski director. And then myself. My name is Kristen Kaschub. I'm assistant head of school for enrollment here at Gould Academy. We are a small school of approximately 230 students located in Western Maine. We have the benefit of being associated with Sunday River, which offers some of the best skiing in New England. We have some of the longer season here, so our students have access to a fair amount of snow and longevity in getting on snow. If it's not here, then we're finding it elsewhere as well. So I'll let everyone speak to that. But Gould is a wonderful opportunity for the student that is looking for academic rigor as well as high level athletics, including significant snow sports. We focus on having smaller classes. We do teach the AP honors level curriculum here at Gould and facilitate that in using the Harkness model, which is much more discussion based. We are also highly experiential, so whenever possible, we're taking our learning outside of the classroom and making it real for students. And we have a wonderful program that we've been doing now for 40 years called the 4-Point Program, which allows our students in the month of March to do something different different every year that they're with us. In ninth grade, they'll travel internationally and they will engage in cultural travel as well as community service and live with a host family. In 10th grade, they'll have a focus on community service as well as arts. And then in 11th grade, they will have a coming of age of sorts here at Gould in utilizing the nature that surrounds campus. We go camping for 9 days, 8 nights. And then in their final year with us, they'll do a capstone project. So you'll see through this presentation, while our focus is on athletics, we also offer a wide range of opportunity in terms of academics, arts, STEM, all kinds of opportunities. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Michael, who will take it from here. You're muted, Michael.
There we go. Oh, let me get back to our screen here. All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Michael Hirschbuhl. I'm the head U14 Alpine coach at Gould Academy. And to start the presentation off, I want to speak about what our options are for high school. Obviously, we have to go to high school and we have to ski in high school if we want to get onto a college ski team. So I'll speak more from the Alpine perspective quickly and then hand it over to Ben for the Nordic perspective. So the way that it works in high school, you kind of have 3 pathways. The first one is your varsity ski team. This is going to be the lowest tier of competition and training. So you have limited racing and training opportunities. It's pretty hard to get onto a college team from a varsity ski team. And the reason being is ski racing, particularly Alpine, is a volume-based sport. So if you want to be competitive, if you want to get onto a college team at whatever level, you need to ski a lot. That's pretty much what it comes down to. And since training and racing opportunities are somewhat limited, maybe just a couple times a week at the varsity level, this makes it a little bit more difficult. The middle ground is being part of a weekend ski club. So you'll have more training and racing opportunities. There's some limited pathways to skiing after high school, but it is still pretty difficult. So if this is the pathway that you want to ski in college, your best bet is a snow sports focused school. So this is going to be lots of training, lots of racing, personalized coaching, and it's your best chance of getting on a college team. A lot of competitive schools have comprehensive year-round programs that often athletes will ski 100, maybe 150 days a year, just depending on what their plan is. So that is pretty much what it comes down to. It's a volume-based sport. To get that volume, you have to go to a school that has snow sports as a big focus. Ben, do you have anything to add from the Nordic perspective?
Yeah, the Nordics, we're just slightly nuanced there. Just like Michael said, those varsity ski teams are like the 3 sport athletes that you would get out of high school that really do their performance during the season, really struggle to make it to the college level. You have mostly skiers from clubs or these snow sports focused schools. You have to remember that a Nordic skier in high school is training, if they want to be competitive for a college team, is training anywhere between 450 hours a year to 600 hours a year. So there's a significant amount of time both in the dryland period and on snow. And that volume, in order to ensure that the athlete doesn't get injured, doesn't overtrain, needs a coach that's kind of consistent in their life. And that's where, say, the club programs, which are, throughout the year, they're usually 12-month clubs or 10-month clubs. And the academies are where you want to go. And I think the biggest difference between the clubs and the academies is that the academics and athletics are blended in the snow sports focused schools, whereas in the clubs, there's usually conflicts between the schools and the clubs with the amount of travel that is necessary to be a successful skier.
Couldn't agree more. All right, so that's a basic overview of options for high school. Now I'm going to turn it over to Eric Harlow, head coach of Colby Alpine, to speak a little bit about the college options.
Wait.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the introduction, Michael. Collegiate skiing for most athletes in the country and even in the world, collegiate skiing represents the kind of top of their experience. It's obviously, it'll be their last experience in ski racing on a team. Oh, sorry. Okay. And so what we see is a lot of athletes will aim toward college in terms of being able to reach even their next set of goals. So athletes coming to the top colleges, they may have goals to make the national team. And so we are often putting programs in place at the top schools to support that. So that's the level of skiing that we work with at the top schools. There are any number of schools that work with athletes kind of on the sliding scale from there down, who are maybe not looking for the national team experience. And so you have, you know, schools like Utah and Denver and Colorado that compete for a national title every year. And they're in what's called the NCAA skiing bracket, which is, there are 21 of these schools. And, you know, again, any number of goals down from making the national team. There is also another completely different league named the USCSA, called the CUSCSA. And this is a much more broad experience where you have anything from, I'm going to let Michael speak to this in a second, but essentially, you know, every NCAA school has a coach, assistant coaches, year-round physical training, 5-6 month seasons. USCSA also has schools that compete and provide programming to that level. And I'll let Michael talk a little bit about the USCSA.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to go into NCAA
Oh, yes,
first, and then
yes,
I
of
will
course,
follow
my
up?
bad, my bad. Okay, excuse me. So we race mostly at the FIS level, and we see a number of athletes compete at the NORAM level, and again at U.S. national championships. The level, like I said, these are often athletes trying to make the national team. So what you see is low-ish FIS points, and the graphic here says, you know, often it's 25 to 100 FIS points in one event, and, you know, 30 to 50 FIS points in the other. We are generally talking with kids an average of, you know, 50 to 55 FIS points. I would say just about every school in our league will have an average of under 100 FIS points on their team. We use generally small rosters. We're able to start 7 per gender in our races, in the carnival races. And so we don't take that many more than that. Our roster is 15. Some schools have even less than that. Some schools are slightly more than that. But what you end up with is, in a league with 13 schools, everybody's taking, you know, per gender, 2 to 3 athletes per year. The spots for these schools are incredibly competitive. And someone coming off of a national team, US national team, Canadian national team, we see kids from the Swedish national team, the Norwegian national team. So all of a sudden, these spots tend to get really competitive. And, you know, to point back to the graphic that we talked about, where, you know, the programs that these kids need to come from, and in order to hit that level, we take the same approach in college: ski as much as we can, spend as much time in the weight room as we can. And then Ben, do you want to talk a little bit about the Nordic side of that?
Yeah, so the Nordic side of it has a little bit, I would say, a little wider span for the amount of FIS points associated with it, but you're getting everything from, you know, former Norwegian World Cup skiers who will go especially out to the Western schools, you know, and that's DU, CU, etc. These guys have had experience on the World Cup. Many have had top 20 finishes on the World Cup. So that's a very high level. And then you have another set of athletes who are US team bound or already on US D teams, C teams, maybe even B teams, few even in the A teams. And that's another set. And then you have that's rounded out by athletes who are kind of from their areas are high up, younger junior skiers who may be looking at that track for a US ski team placement eventually. They have done something at our junior national competitions or world juniors, etc. And so that's really what those college coaches at the NCAA level are looking. They're looking at potential, but they're also looking at performance at a very high level.
All right, great. Thank you both. I will now speak to USCSA, which you can think of as a slightly less competitive league, although there are some teams which model a lot of what NCAA teams do. So I was a USCSA athlete. I was a USCSA varsity athlete at Castleton University, which is now Vermont State University, over in Vermont. And when we look at the varsity side of things, it is FIS and USSA racing during the regular season, and it depends on what division you're racing in. So the McConnell division, for example, is just FIS racing. So it is similar to the NCAA circuit in that sense, although it is quite a bit less competitive. Athletes tend to have higher FIS points. 150 points is pretty common on these teams. And not to say that it's a not competitive league. It is competitive amongst the schools that are there. It's just not as elite as NCAA. So it's a little bit more inclusive. Varsity rosters are about 7 athletes per gender, but team sizes can be a little bit larger. So when I was in school, we had about 30 to 35 athletes between both genders. So it's a little bit larger than what you see at the NCAA level. Again, competing for nationals, that's the ultimate goal for these varsity teams, which are school funded. Occasionally there's some outside sponsors. Some athletic scholarships are available, although that is pretty uncommon at the USCSA level. I think there's only 2 or 3 schools that do that. So if you are competing in this league, that is just something to be aware of. And that's the varsity side of things. So like I said, there are USCSA varsity teams, which do model what NCAA teams do to some extent. And then I'll get into the club teams in 1 second. I just want to give Ben an opportunity to speak about the Nordic side of things here.
Yeah, just like the Alpine side, there are definitely a higher set of points. So there's more opportunity at these clubs and at this varsity skiing level. They're more, as Michael said, they're more inclusive. They're more kind of really, from the Nordic side, really big family bonding groups. There's a lot of connection. They do a lot of interesting, training and connection. And so, where it may be a little bit of a step down from the elite level, it's still, they're competing at a fairly high level, and it gives them a lot of opportunity to continue development. And I think that's the key about this league, is that continued development. Sometimes NCAA is too far a reach for an athlete, but these programs are open. Some of these programs also have interesting relationships with national organizations like US Biathlon and US Ski Jumping. And so that's something to consider if you're in that Nordic track and you want to see a progression outside of what we would call regular cross, which is the regular Nordic skiing, and are looking for more of the Olympic sports of biathlon or jumping. There are a few clubs or a few varsity programs that cater to those specific disciplines. And so it can be a pathway to a whole nother future and a whole lot of more racing and potentially getting you on a future Olympic team.
Well said, Ben. And I will just conclude the varsity side of things by saying that these programs are becoming increasingly more competitive compared to even 5 or 6 years ago. So it's a pretty cool situation that we're in. And if we go over to the club side of things, you're not going to have any FIS races for USCSA clubs. This is going to be USSA, USSS, which is national ranked races, and then non-scored events. So these teams, depending on the league, will actually compete against some varsity teams, but it tends to be club to club. Schedule still includes regular season races, regionals, and nationals. One important point about that is some schools have an NCAA team and a USCSA club team. And if that's the situation, that USCSA club team is usually prohibited from competing in nationals. It's just a little unique thing to be aware of. This side of things is very inclusive. Team sizes vary by school and club budget. So it's not something that is usually funded by a school's athletic department. This is usually from the student government or, a club budget from a school. So you tend to see a wider range of resources at this level, just depending on which school you're at. So all athletes are eligible to compete throughout the regular competition season, and rosters may vary. Anecdotally, when I was racing in college, there was several athletes that I knew of that raced at the USCSA club level, which is really cool because they actually had the capacity to maybe even race NCAA. They just, for whatever reason, decided that that wasn't a path they wanted to go down. So they were racing at the USCSA club level. So you really get a wide variety of skills. Club dues and some race fee support, depending on the school's arrangement with the team. This is pretty variable, but it is a really great option. Really awesome friendships are usually formed through the USCSA clubs, and it's a pretty great way to stay involved with your sport in college if you're not competitive at the NCAA or USCSA varsity level. Ben, did you have anything to say about the Nordic side of things here?
I think a very similar, points. You make all the great points. I think it's also for athletes who, want to stay in touch with the sport, but also have shifted their focus in a lot of ways. In a lot of cases, sometimes the Nordic athletes, they're like, I love the skiing, but I really want to focus on my academics and the career beyond college. And so that shift in focus allows them to do this both. So these schools provide a lot of opportunities for those athletes.
And like I mentioned, some schools do have an NCAA team and a USCSA team. In this arrangement, the NCAA team will be the varsity team and the USCSA team will be a club. So if you have your heart set on going to one school, there is actually different pathways at that singular institution. It just depends on what route you want to go down. And this is a key point to keep in mind. Just because an athlete might not qualify for an NCAA ski team doesn't mean that you can't participate in competitive skiing in college. A lot of the times people think if they can't get onto that D1 circuit that, college skiing is not an option for them. This is not true. That is a common misconception. If you want to get involved, if an athlete wants to continue to ski in college, there is a pathway, whether it's NCAA, USCSA varsity, or USCSA club. Eric, did you have anything to add here?
Yeah, I do. This is an incredible weakness in our sport from a national perspective. We see athletes self-selecting out because they're only aware of this singular NCAA pathway. And maybe they become aware at 15, like, geez, I'm not one of the better kids. I'm never going to be able to ski in college. And we end up losing kids out of the sport before they've hit, physical maturity, competitive maturity. So I think this is a critical point. I mean, I'm sure there are other key points, but this is really a critical point from a sport perspective for the national governing body.
Agreed. And I'll turn it over to Ben to talk more about the holistic approach to deciding on what choices might be best for student athletes.
Yeah. And I can speak also to going back to that previous slide too, from a Nordic perspective. A Nordic athlete doesn't mature until they're about 25, 26. So they have a longer maturity curve. Sometimes the powers, the the power and speed sports have a shorter curve to that. But in reality, I think it's understanding that this is a long pathway. I think about, I skied at Williams College, I raced carnivals, and, you know, and then by the time of my senior year, you know, had some struggles with mono, and so thought kind of the future was done, but then eventually went on to go race for the U.S. military and then race for the U.S. biathlon team after. And so I think it's really understanding that arc of curve. And so we have a tendency to create a pyramid model, and it's kind of like, how can we square the model and create a bigger base for our sport? Because you do see late bloomers that really, they become, you know, champions. We've got one example in the World Cup today, who is a 30-year-old who's now the top, a 32-year-old who's now top, and she hadn't made the top 20 since she was 28. So it really shows that you can see great growth. When we look at kind of what's the right from an academic standpoint, and what I like to talk to my student athletes about, and any student athlete who's thinking about, you know, what's it like to, you know, ski at these private schools and then go on to you know, ski in college. I said, I always ask, what's your why? Why are you doing this? What, you know, really having them look into that aspect of that, and also understand, who do you want to be? We can determine our what is going to change throughout life, but I think it's also understanding that why and that who, because that really drives the passion for the sport. It changes the motivation from extrinsic. There's still extrinsic elements to the motivation that is, you know, outcome based, like placement, but it really makes the sport intrinsic to self. And you have to be holistic in your development. That's kind of what we focus here on at Gould. Like, how are you being seen in all the aspects of your life, whether it's in the community, whether it's in your sport, and whether it's, you know, in your academics as well. If you don't have the academics and that academic base, you're not going to make it into those more selective colleges, especially those NESCAC leagues. They're just not going to take you if you can't meet that base benchmark. And then how are you going to exist when you get to college and make sure that you can satisfy the academic rigor that's required for going to those college? How much time are you going to commitment? And that time commitment and that understanding of all the pressures that are on you as you go through your development, that's what we really focus on here at Gould. Well, you got your academics, you got these community life obligations, and you have this sport that is going to take a considerable amount of your time. You know, Michael can probably give you the statistics of how long they're on snow, but we just sent a group to Austria, and we just made sure that they were on their academics. They were getting constant monitoring, making sure that they're keeping up with their academics, because we want to have them go on and be successful in college. And also thinking about, what if skiing doesn't pan out for you? You get on the team, you have an injury. Are you still going to want to be at that college? Does that college hold enough for you? Do you have learning differences? This is super important, which I think people underlook. Some colleges are better at supporting those learning differences than others. You know, so when you, like what we do with our college counseling department, is we make sure that we understand the profile of the school that they're going into, in order to understand, do they have the support centers necessary? Do they have the teacher to student ratios? You know, we have a high, our student to teacher ratio is very small, so there's a lot of that one-on-one support. But that helps develop the skills that then they can kind of be on their own when they get to the college play. And do you want to play other sports in college? You know, that's another thing to think about. You know, in a lot of ways, it's hard to be a singular sport, you know, and you're going to have a high amount of focus. So that's going to change the portfolio of schools you look at. So if you're thinking, well, I want to go play club this, or I want to play club that, well, that's going to change your trajectory. Or if you're like, skiing is my life, this is what I want to do, you're going to be highly focused, and that's going to be your focus. And does location matter? thinking about where you want to go. Does it fit your profile? How far do you have to drive to the mountain? Those are other things to be thinking about. Is the mountain in your back door, or do you have to, drive 45 minutes to practice every day? Those are all in your equation. And being academically prepared for that just lessens the stress and the burden. I don't know, Eric, if you want to talk about any of the kind of the academics at play, especially at that NESCAC arena, and how important that is.
Yeah, it's true. It is really important. I think that the difference between the NESCAC schools as a D3 school that are sort of really prioritize rigorous academics is that you're not allowed to miss any academic endeavor in order to participate in training. So that's really important. That's a really important component of coming to the NESCAC schools. You understand that the rules and sort of the governing laws of the conference are such that you're putting your academics first. And so having success in that arena will always be number one at these types of schools.
All right, thank you both. Very insightful. I will just talk briefly about the timeline as it relates to Alpine. And basically, this is going to start as a U12. So 10 and 11 years old. And I know that sounds early, but you want to have a basic awareness that college ski racing exists by this age. And the reason I say that, and the reason it is so early, is because by the time you become a U14, that's when you can start to attend an institution like Gould, for example. We offer winter term for U14s. That's 12 and 13-year-olds, and that is their first entry into competitive ski racing at the high school level. So having that awareness as a U12 is going to let you decide, if I do maybe want to ski race in college one day, I should look potentially at a snow sports focused school. By the time you're a U14, you might want to start researching what schools offer ski racing. It's pretty informal, just building that awareness, seeing what your potential options could be. When you're a U16, so 14, 15-year-olds, that's when you can really start to consider NCAA versus USCSA. If you're one of the top U16 athletes for your age in the country, maybe you're going to consider that NCAA pathway. Again, a lot of things change, but very important to start thinking about which direction you're going to head. By the time you're a U18, so that's 16, 17-year-olds, you're going to start to talk to college coaches, maybe apply to schools, get accepted, right? That's when all of that crunch time happens. I'm friends with our college counselor, so he's in the thick of it these days. U21, that's when you're going to be a college ski racer. Really key point to mention here is, especially at the NCAA level, PG years are becoming increasingly common. I think Eric can speak to this, but I think the average is about 2 PG years. And the idea with that is you're simply lowering your points. You're trying to make yourself more attractive to these college coaches. Is that right, Eric?
Yeah, that is correct. I think the average in our team is between 1 and 2 years, but it's closer to 2 than it is to 1.
And Ben for Nordic timeline.
So just like our development curve, we have we start a little later in that researching phase in the U14. We find that parents are a super important part of this process. And kind of understanding where they want, it's measuring both the parents' desires and the students' desires. And this is sometimes where we do a lot of navigation as coaches and helping them understand, okay, what is their true love and what do they really want to do? And making sure that kind of is measured in terms of capacity and understanding around that. At U16, yes, they should be really thinking about that same bit of tracking. It's your first exposure. The U18 is really where it starts kind of I guess the trajectory is starting to get determined. A lot of the Nordic coaches are looking at the junior year, especially around, did you make JNs? Are you at JNs? Are you an All-American? They're going to be looking for those results. They're not really concerned about state races or any of those type of things. They really don't care about if you're the state champion. They're really going at the kind of national level competitions and looking to pick from that stock and compete within that. And then at U20, you're really a college racer. At U18 or U20, depending. We don't tend to do as many PG years, but it's starting to go. It's starting to be a factor at play. Right now, I have a student who's doing their PG year over racing in Europe and Italy. And that's what they're going to need to be competitive on the Bates. They're already accepted at Bates. So, but I have had other athletes who are stepping on the teams at Middlebury, Bowdoin, Colby. I've got a few up at Colby, which is awesome. And they're stepping on as freshmen, but they're not racing they're racing kind of the bigger circuit races. They're not getting into the kind of the NCAAs and those type of things because their trajectory is still early on, but they're starting to make gains there. So this is really where you see really around the U18 is really where a choice point has to be made. Are you going to go and take the longer route? Are you going to take a PG year, or do you just want to get to college? And then here are your choices, given that. You can get into the school because most Nordies are nerdy, so they usually can get into the school, but can they get on the team? That's really where the decision point comes.
Great. Thank you, Ben. Brings us to our second key point. Athletes have plenty of time to decide what path is right for them, but the key is to educate about potential options and just knowing what's out there. That's the key. Knowing from an early age, college ski racing is the thing. These are the pathways. And if I want to get to that pinnacle in the sport at college, it is going to be pretty challenging, but there is a clear path to get there. And we'll go on to Ben. Do you want to take this about how to research some schools?
Yes. I mean, our critical point is coaches and college counseling. That is really where the drive to understand and really understand the schools you want to be at. And that's where I see most success is really saying, what kind of team culture do you want to be part of? That's where the social media comes in. See how they present themselves. See how they present themselves on the circuit. We see these racers on kind of, races we have in common throughout the year, whether it's a warm-up race that the, colleges are getting ready for, or we're competing directly against them because we have kind of in Nordic, we have mixed Carnival and Eastern Cups. So talk to the other kids as well in the programs and understand what that's like for them. They need to establish these relationships. And then from the back end, we do, like Michael and I, we talk to a lot of the coaches. Most of the coaches that I know are skied against are now coaches at the NCAA program. So I can also give them insights on athletes as well. But I think about the culture as well. And I think about the students, their own individual flavor that they would bring. I think what is really critical for your students is you want to bring not only a better performance to the team, but you also want to showcase you're going to improve the experience of those athletes at college and improve the experience of those coaches at colleges. And that's, I think, what I hear most from college coaches is like, yeah, this is a good team member, really supportive. They're buying in. They're really a part of it. So you also have to, it's not just the research aspect that we can do. It's also helping foster those individuals to understand it's the whole picture that these coaches are looking for. And that takes a lot of guidance, and we do that through our coaches and our college counselors. But happy to have either Michael or Eric chime in.
Yeah, I'll say as a coach, I love it when parents and athletes talk to me about my own experience in college. I think that's the best way to do it. Just like Ben said, right? Chances are your coach raced in college, and chances are they have pretty good relationships with those coaches. Not saying that that's, going to give you any advantage in getting into a school or on the team or anything like that, but because they have that perspective, they might be able to really impart some wisdom with your particular student athlete. So that would be my go-to, is just talk to your coach. Chances are they have a pretty awesome connection with the college scene. Eric, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, really quickly, you could title this "How to Research Athletes," and it would be the same. I mean, this is how we, I go back down this list, even to the point where I'm talking to, if I trust an athlete that's on that team, to talk a little bit about the athlete that we're recruiting. The first hurdle will always be, what is this person's fit within our current team structure and the kids that we've recruited so far. So while it's not necessarily an ironclad advantage, to the fact that Parker Gray and I go back 25, I wish it were that short, but longer, with the fact that Parker Gray and I go back 30 years, it's not an advantage. Parker's, when I get an honest report from Parker on a kid, and we're able to talk through a little bit about our goals for the team and his goals for the athlete, it helps. Yeah, that every little bit helps. But the first one, but for that first hurdle to clear is, is it a fit culturally?
Well said. And here we have some examples of those elite NCAA schools. As you can see, Maine is represented quite well with Colby and Bates up there. Also Vermont, a few choices out west. This is just a selection just to give you an idea. And the USCSA circuit, a little bit more diverse offerings. If you have a student athlete that is interested in military service, that is an option at the USCSA level. The Air Force Academy has a team. Ben, I don't know if you want to offer any perspective on that, considering your background.
Yeah, I mean, we had individuals come right on to our world-class athlete program right from the Air Force teams. And so there, I would say a lot of it is, soldiers who just want, or, cadets who just want to kind of experience the outdoors, but it is a pathway as well. They do recruit athletes. All these military groups, the Army included, are all looking for people who are super physically fit, critical thinkers, and ability to provide service to our nation. And there are pathways out of those where you compete in the military, or you compete in the civilian world against other competitors in the civilian place, or sometimes international military competitions, which are super fun.
And on to you again, Ben, for key point number 3.
Look at this. It's a great way to really continue your sport. We want our kids to love something. I always say, as a coach, if my kid is still skiing after they leave me, whether it's in college, whether it's post-college, that's what I want to see. I consider that the best success. And so we want to keep that in mind to everyone here. It's not just a little compartmental, little point in their life. It's about their whole life. And I think that's super important. I still have skiers who send me, Strava posts of what they've done recently, and they're still active and they're still outdoors. And that's really what our sports is about, is being active, being outdoors, and loving it and challenging yourself. There are so many soft skills, social emotional skills that are learned in sport. We learn, I always used to say my kids learn sometimes more social emotionally on a weekend when they have races because they're cooking, they're cleaning, they have highlights, disappointments. They have to celebrate celebrate a teammate while they don't have a great race, or they are celebrated by a teammate, and then they have to comfort that teammate as well. You learn so much, and you'll take that into wherever you go, into business, into education, or service, wherever it is. It's all about a team player atmosphere.
And Ben, if you want to talk about how Gould might play a role in this, go for it.
Yeah, so I'm super passionate about this. I'm a three-peater at Gould. I was here 94, 95. Eric was a senior when I was a junior. I love sport. I loved developing, my own passions for the sport. It took me to race at Williams. It took me to race in the military. It took me to coach. It took me to Europe to race in Europa Cups. It helped me develop the team skills to be, a team player. And what we do here is we think about it from a process mindset. We want to make sure that you have the process in play that gets you to the performance goals that then hopefully yields the outcome goals. But all along the way, we're constantly working with you. We have the academics at play. We have the community life at play. We have all those aspects that make a holistic adolescent development happen. I talked to Michael about athletes when you're like, hey, I'm noticing this in the classroom. What are you seeing on the hill, Michael? How are things going? Michael's talking to college counseling. We're talking to teachers. We live, eat, and sleep with these, we're here always, so they can always access us. And that's the nice thing about this is that, 24-hour a day, 7 days a week access. And we can make sure that their, performance is guided through this. I think that's the number one thing that they get here is I can say, hey, I noticed you in class. You don't seem, everything's going okay. And I'm like, oh, I feel tired. I think I may be getting sick. And you're as a coach, you then go, hey, all right, let's take a break. Let's reset. Or, you can celebrate them in those moments. So there's a lot of esteem, a lot of belonging, and really that helps them achieve that kind of self-actualization of achieving at the highest level. So that's what we do. I'm super passionate about it. I could talk for hours, but I'm probably going to get pulled on that one. But it's so awesome. And we have so many. I mean, we have high performance coach, high mental performance coach. We just had a sports nutritionist here. It's like we're constantly thinking about that whole student.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Ben. And as someone that also lives on campus, just being accessible to our student athletes is, paramount. But, that whole support system, that's the key, right? The actual on snow product is important, but it's, that entire holistic experience that the student athlete is getting. And I think we do that pretty well here. I would agree. We've got some helpful resources. These will be sent out afterwards. I encourage everyone here to explore these. If you want to get really in depth, there's that second to last resource is that white paper about college skiing and how it relates to particularly Alpine. But there's some pretty cool stuff to dive into here if you're interested in some further reading. Thank you for your attention. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Yeah, and we're going to turn it over to Larry, and he's going to help facilitate some of the Q&A that you folks might have. And you're on mute, Larry. You have to unmute.
First question I have is for Eric. It's something we touched on beforehand. Eric, what's it like, and this applies in a few other places, what's it like being a D1 program in D3 school for the benefit of our consultants?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly provides a level of complication on our end. You're dealing with a number of set of rules that are different, for the levels of skiing. And because skiing is a niche sport, we compete against schools that offer scholarships, and we have only need-based financial aid. So, there is some nuance to that, but the trade-off is that, we get to compete in the best collegiate skiing league in the world. So, we feel pretty fortunate to be part of it.
And then a question for the folks at Gould. It seems that you have two tracks within Gould, one more competitive than the other. Is there fluidity between those tracks? And then with regard to PG years, if they're taken at Gould, is there any financial aid for those continuing additional years?
I can take the first part and then turn it over to you, Ben, for that last piece. But yes, we do have two tracks here at Gould. There's that varsity prep school league side of things, and then there's the comp on snow side of things. So there's a lot of fluidity between the two. Oftentimes, athletes will start out in one track and will maybe bounce between to figure out exactly what their direction is and what they are finding most fulfilling. So an example, last year, I was the head U16 coach last year. So working with those 14, 15-year-olds, we had plenty of athletes that, were attending our competitive races all over New England, but then were also participating in those prep school races more as a for fun thing. But we've also had athletes come here, start out in that varsity team. And we, as coaches, have realized, oh, wow, this athlete has a lot of capacity in this sport. And then they've actually bumped up to the competitive side of things. So it is fluid, and we're all about athletes having the best fit for them in their sport. Ben, you want to take that next piece?
Yeah,
about,
I can take
financial aid PGs.
Yeah, PGs was probably more Kristen because she does the finance on that, but I'll kind of elaborate a little bit more. I have had athletes who have started in that kind of more recreational sense, and they're now skiing at college. And so I think that was one of the other aspects, how many Gould skiers go on to ski in college. Right now, I have about, in the last 2 years, I have about 10 athletes who are skiing in college right now, mostly with NESCAC schools. And we have had some others from the Alpine side as well go to the NESCACs. So it's, and then we've had some others who have decided to go and do, take their shot. I think we had one trying for the Ireland team. And then we've had a bunch of snowboarders who have been on the World Cup. So that's really what they go in all kinds of different pathways as they go. And then I'll let Kristen answer the financial aid sense.
Sure. So in terms of financial aid for postgraduates, they would have to we would partner with the coaches to see if this is something that will align with their future aspirations and if it makes sense in terms of attending Gould and if we can help get them to that next level. So it's really more about the partnership with the coaches and understanding how we can tee this student up for success.
I think, Kristen, we've seen that be successful. We did some work with our snowboarders a few years ago, and that was hyper successful. They made it onto World Cup teams, got World Cup starts, and we were just giving them a little bit a longer runway to achieve their dreams and also add halo to the school as well, because you have high performing athletes working with younger athletes. It tends to raise the performance overall.
So, Eric, what distinction do you see when you're considering Western versus Eastern skiers, if any? Oh, and I should add in even European skiers.
Yeah. I mean, look, number one distinction for us is fit. I don't, Gould is in Western Maine, so maybe a little bit easier access to culture. We're in Central Maine, and Colby does an incredible job providing access to culture. But I think that's number one. I don't personally distinguish between one place or the other. We tend to see athletes that are coming from the West tend to be searching for a higher academic rigor than they're able to find in the schools that are in the Rocky Mountain Intercollegiate Skiing Association. Students from Europe, which we don't have any of at Colby, but they tend to be searching for scholarship opportunities. I mean, in many countries in the world, their colleges are subsidized by the state. So, the kids that are coming over, especially the higher performing athletes, they are searching for as much support as they can find.
And once again, for Eric, if you don't mind, you talk to me, or talk to us rather, about the balance between any outreach you do from the rankings that are accessible to you, as opposed to outreach that's required from the student. And I'm sure that there's some of each, but maybe you just talk to the
Yeah.
here about how that works from your point of view.
I mean, it truly is a balance. You're trying to determine, again, I mean, the competitive fit in this regard. You want to reach out to the best athletes, and certainly we do an amount of that. But I would say I first often will reach out to their coach. So if there's someone at Gould that we really like, I would reach out to Michael or to Parker and say, hey, is this athlete interested in Colby? That's the first clearinghouse for me, because as soon as I hear, well, now they'd rather go out west. Okay, well, Colby is not in the Rockies, or here in Central Maine, or that's not ever going to change. So that's kind of the first thing that I go to. We hear from a lot of athletes, and I would say we get back to most of them. But you're constantly looking at not only FIS points, but also results, because you can have good results, but maybe not a good FIS point outcome. So it's a balance, and I don't know that there's science to it, Larry. I think it's, you're just pulling all of the strings you can find to get the best fit.
I see from the notes that Jeff Quebec had his hand raised for a question. Jeff, why don't you pose it?
Yeah, thank you. So thanks each of you for this presentation. It's certainly pretty impressive, and your enthusiasm is awesome. So this question sort of, I guess I'd gear this to both Michael and Eric. So you had referenced students doing 2 postgraduate years. And so if you could maybe clarify that, is that students who are doing 2 postgraduate years at academic institutions, or are they doing it maybe a year or two where they're focusing solely on skiing?
This is a great question. I would say the vast majority, they're focusing solely on skiing. There are some that will take collegiate courses, sort of collegiate level courses. The issue is, and I'm going to be really frank and transparent here, the issue is, Colby wants to educate you themselves. They don't necessarily want to take transfer credit. So that may or may not make an impact at Colby, but it actually has a higher chance of making an impact at a place like UNH or UVM, or certainly some of the USCSA schools, same boat. Some of these credits may transfer, and that may be really valuable for you, because what you're then able to do is take at times a lighter course load while you're in the competition period.
Yeah, great point. My own experience, that was a very common situation on the USCSA side of things. A lot of people that were on my team took those PG years because they had the intention of potentially getting onto an NCAA team, didn't work out for whatever reason, and then, oh, sweet, I have all this transfer credit, and they were actually able to take pretty light course loads in the winter. So it was a win-win.
Great, thank you very much. And thanks to Elizabeth and Larry for organizing this.
Yeah, no worries. And I think Bill Newman, you had your hand up too.
Yeah, I'd love to hear, Eric, your thoughts on the year-round ski academies, the Strattons, the Berks, the Carrabassett Valley. I believe Burke Mountain still holds a record for sending more graduates to the U.S. ski team than any of the other ski academies. And also how you assess a candidate's readiness for that degree of intensity at a year-round ski academy. My assumption is graduates from a ski academy, assuming the academics are there, go to the front of the line.
So I just want
No.
to, before
Go ahead,
the
Larry.
answer, Eric, before the answer, just want to point out to my colleagues here that if you haven't done this, you can look at, say, Eric's roster, and you will see where those students came from. You have to click because the profiles aren't immediately apparent like a lot of Division Ones. But anyway, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the ski academies, they offer an unbelievable experience, and I've worked at a number of them. It is a quite narrow experience. It's not very broad, but they're drilling down pretty deep. And I would say the ski academy athletes tend to make up for the lack of breadth with a great work ethic. So, I would say, and I'm not going to out anyone here, but we have academic alerts set up, and I would say it's a balance. It's not just the ski academy kids that get alerts. We also have boarding school kids that get alerts. So it's not limited to just one sort of brand of graduate. It's not the front of the line thing. I hear you. But ultimately results, we're all just looking for fast skiers. And, it doesn't matter if they come from Burke or Gould or Canada or the Moon, like that's, so that will be the foot in the door. And then, character, like we talked about.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions before we wrap up? I know we're at 1 o'clock. No?
No,
All right.
nothing else in the chat.
And anything you wanted to add, Allison, for the group? No?
No, thank you again. I just want to sentiment. I really appreciate Elizabeth and Larry, you guys facilitating this. This was wonderful and so insightful. And thank you to our presenters for taking time out of your days to help us with this. This was really great.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank
It was
you.
great. We enjoyed it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Eric.